Good evening. Welcome to Monday, June 17th meeting of the Town of Montague Select Board. Topics may start earlier than specified unless there is a hearing scheduled. The meeting is being taped and recorded by MCTV, and the board also tapes the meetings. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to tape the meeting? If you're welcome to do so, just let us know. And votes may be taken. And with that, I am Rich Kukulitz,
Chris Botwell.
Board of Selectmen.
I'm Steve Ellis, Town Administrator.
Okay. First on the agenda is a 30-minute presentation or less from Ty and Bond regarding the Strathmore demo design project and findings. So, gentlemen, if you'd like to introduce yourselves,
sure, of course.
Get started.
Sure, Mark Richards with Ty and Bond.
My name is Brian Day with Ty and Bond as well.
So we have completed a draft set of demolition bid documents for the partial demolition of the Strathmore Mill complex. We can run through the high level, the scope for the abatement and demolition, and then open it up for questions.
Okay.
We have 3 copies of the draft documents, which can be finalized after we receive any comments from the town. But they're considered mostly final at this point. We just wanted the town to have the opportunity to go through the documents, particularly after today, and if there's other things that may have been overlooked or questions that require some sort of change, we'll do that.
Additionally, we also have a cost opinion that we prepared. We have several copies of that as well.
So the plans I'm flipping through are generally the bid documents that at the time this partial demolition was ready to go out for public bid. These documents would be used for that process. Depending on the timing and other interim work that may happen before that happens, these documents may be revised. The first few pages were just general notes and a photographic log, which are reference to the contract documents and some contract photos that would help a contractor understand the scope. So sheet C100 is the first plan set that shows the overall partial demolition of the complex, which buildings are targeted for partial demolition, and which buildings would stay as part of this first phase of demolition. Most notably, Eagle Creek Hydro, Building 9, is the one active building within the complex that has added significant complexity to the project, which we've talked about in the past, due to significant structural issues and how that building is to remain standing while partial demolition occurs around it. The buildings that are grayed out are the buildings that are targeted for abatement and demolition, including the stack, and then the buildings known as 1 and 2, which parallel the Connecticut River, would remain, and also building 4 and Eagle Creek would remain, building 9. So everything to the west would stay, and then here would be demolished. As we know, access is fairly challenging through Canal Road, which is operated and maintained by First Light. There's weight restrictions, width restrictions on that road. It creates premiums for access, removal of debris, so it makes it a challenging project from that aspect in terms of the size of equipment you can bring into this property. So the means and methods of that demolition in terms of which equipment size and height would be based on the contractors looking at this in the future.
Mark, additionally, just to let you folks know, Building 2 and Building 9 that are to remain, there will also be some activity around the roof levels for each one of those to make sure that those are buttoned up after demolition.
So in terms of demolition, you have a separation that's required from Building 2 and Building 3 along the Connecticut River. So these buildings are essentially one, but built at different stages. So we selected a common demolition location where we can separate the roof. The wall that would result at this location would have some structural infill repairs to it. This section here would have some structural infill repairs too. And then I'll get into in a few plan sheets later what's happening on the edge of Building 9, which is the more complex area. In terms of the demolition itself, it's pretty standard from an abatement standpoint, or the things from an asbestos standpoint that are worth pointing out.
Large scale of various asbestos containing materials. primarily roofing, we have window glazing compounds, things like that, very typical of these types of buildings, these ages of buildings. Additionally, we have transite or cement boards that are nailed to the ceiling areas throughout the whole building. Those will have to come out. Several boiler systems will have to be dismantled and demolished in place in order to access all the interior components that are all asbestos containing.
Steam piping?
A wide variety of steam piping of various sizes, dimensions. But essentially the good news is that all these areas are all accessible for the contractor, so that bodes fairly well with respect to actual pricing. So.
Up front in the building, we have two large, approximate 15,000 gallon above ground storage tanks that were full of number 4 and number 6 fuel oil, which is a heavier, thicker oil that needs to be heated. That was used to run the boilers. Those tanks would be drained and removed. Other miscellaneous containers of oil and hazardous material within the building would be removed prior to demolition also. For the most part, utilities are somewhat of a maze in there, but for the most part it's been isolated because of some water main issues that have happened down on Canal Road previously. So it's some cutting and plugging and capping of known pipes that enter the building along Canal Road. Fairly standard also. This is a conceptual grading plan. So is one of the measures cost measures we discussed with the town was reusing demolition debris as for some of the backfill. When these buildings come out, which is here and here, you're going to have a large 25-foot drop from Canal Road down to the lowest elevation. That area needs to be backfilled to provide stability against Canal Road, help improve safety for the site. So we're going to make use of the coated and uncoated brick and concrete materials, which would be crushed to about 3 inches minus, so it's an engineered usable product. The gray shaded area is roughly where that demolition debris would be placed. We submitted a permit application to Mass DEP called a beneficial use determination. They provided their review comments, which are pretty standard. They'll be providing that permit within the next week or two, so we'll have that permit in hand, which will allow the placement of this material. Because it's considered a solid waste because it was coated or painted debris, it would be a deed notice of the placement of this material. In the event it was to be excavated in the future, it's recorded appropriately on the deed. Once this material is placed, it's covered with 6 inches of loam and seeded to stabilize the slope to prevent and control future erosion. By reusing this material on site, it drops the demolition costs significantly by at least a couple $100,000 by crushing and using material on site. This is just a general cross-section of showing the debris. The debris would be placed on filter fabric and covered as a demarcation separation barrier, so you can identify it easily in the future, followed by the 6 inches of loam and followed by the seed for vegetation support.
Could you comment on sort of the pitch and grading of that relative to the buildings that will remain and how that?
Sure. The slope we're creating is a 3 horizontal, 1 vertical slope, 3-to-1 slope, which is a fairly flat slope. It's not terribly steep. We're trying to balance a slope that gets us the backfill needed to reach the height of the road, but also stabilize this area. So right now this area is conceptual grading, but when it's graded, we'd be pitching stormwater away from building 9 and to the extent we can pitch it away from building 2 to remain, so stormwater would sheet flow off the site.
Bruce, have a question?
Is there a drainage area below the fill?
Drainage area below
Drainage, how is it drained? It's in the basement, is that correct?
It's not technically a base, it's the lowest level of the building, so you have
It's contained?
so anything that stormwater that hits the site will infiltrate or sheet flow off the site.
Infiltrate to the bottom of the
Infiltrate
lowest
in yeah, the bottom of the lowest elevation slabs will be penetrated for
Yeah.
drainage, so stormwater can infiltrate into the ground.
That was
Or
changed.
yeah, or sheet flow
If you were
out.
thinking of going into the tailways.
Correct. We were thinking of options of how do we control stormwater, and it turns out to keep it fairly simple,
Yeah.
as opposed to putting in new structures and new conveyance systems. Just the water that hits the site will infiltrate or sheet flow
So
off.
you penetrate the existing
Slabs.
concrete slabs with
Correct.
fairly large, what are they gonna be by penetrated? You're
So
talking-
so they use a whole ram and poke holes in the concrete slab, create holes, every 5 feet on center throughout the slab. The majority of the slab at the base will remain, but it'll be penetrated for drainage. Because we're on for those that obviously know the site, we're elevated above the Connecticut River on a fieldstone foundation, mortared foundation wall that doesn't like a lot of vibration and moving things around. So we want to keep as much of the base foundation system intact. So the lowest slab elevation here will be penetrated for drainage. The slab of building 3 will not be penetrated. That slab will remain fully intact. That sits on top of that Connecticut River foundation wall. We don't want to create a bigger project for the town by having to deal with that foundation wall.
Okay.
Let's see, so these are just some standard construction details. So you can't read this. These are some structural details, which I'm going to get into right now. Possibly now, let's see. This is a section through the building looking west. So hard to see. You can see Eagle Creek building. This is their existing tail race. The water that comes from the upper canal through their water wheel and out, displaying that for the contractor. They're not working over that area, but they're working adjacent to it. So certainly very important that they're aware of what's there for protection. There is bedrock outcrops along the canal wall, foundation wall, that we're noting to the contractor. In some areas, the bedrock transitions into fieldstone foundation walls. Our goal is any foundations along Canal Road are going to stay. We're not pulling any of that out. So again, you don't want to mess with the integrity of Canal Road, and then we'd be backfilling against that road as part of demolition. We certainly all know about the stack. The stack has some loose bricks up top. The stack will come down as part of this demolition phase. The means and methods of that demolition would be up to the contractor, how they want to approach it. It's a very tight site. Bringing in a very tall crane may not be possible, so they're going to have to bring some innovation to the table to see how they're going to actually take that stack down. But certainly it'll probably be a very controlled demolition, nothing dramatic in terms of video or newsworthiness. It would be brick by brick probably. The buildings that remain at our demolition limits, it's hard to see these details unless you look at them closely, but there's lower level openings, doorway openings, window openings that will be filled in with CMU, the lowest level, CMU block to help restrict access. The upper windows will be filled in with wood framing, just 2x4s and plywood to keep the elements generally out of the building until such time they decide what we're doing with the remaining buildings. But not looking at a significant investment to weather tight the remaining buildings, just getting some of the openings filled in. Yes?
Are you finished with the structural part?
We haven't got, not yet.
Okay.
Yep, okay. There is one abandoned tail race. Turn that back towards you. Within building, what was the last building number?
3.
Building 3 that is being demolished. There's a tail race that daylights into the Connecticut River. That requires a structural cap. So there'll be a framed in concrete or CMU block wall built in to cover this opening. And then from the top of the slab, from the site side, they'll introduce flowable fill and fill this void and cavity and to help stabilize that foundation wall along the Connecticut River. So we have some structural design details of how that wall would be constructed and then infilled. Now getting to the Eagle Creek building, building 9. So this is looking towards the west at the edge This would be the new exterior wall of Eagle Creek. Now, we talked about the backfill that would occur on that previous drawing where the crushed concrete and brick would be placed. To place that backfill, which is required, it would have to generally be backfilled against the wall of this building, which we can't do. That wall was not designed to withstand a back load or a backfill load against the wall. So to allow this that backfill to be placed to stabilize Canal Road and to keep Eagle Creek in operation, we needed to design a concrete retaining wall that would step down, that would be constructed at the face of Building 9. And that wall would not put any pressure on the existing exterior wall of Building 9, so it would be basically a freestanding wall that can support the back load or the backfill load from the additional fill that would be placed. There would be some doorways that would be filled in prior to that wall being constructed. I'll show you a section through there, which, now this unfortunately creates an expensive addition to the project. So this is a section looking towards the Connecticut River, and you can see this concrete wall here that is set off a few feet from the face of Building 9. This is at different sections along the face of Building 9. So you're creating this cantilevered freestanding wall that's anchored to bedrock, and then there's some flow fill placed between their building and the wall to create a stable area for backfill to be placed.
Does this take us all the way down to the lowest basement level?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And were those basements connected beneath that building and Building 5?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. When you're at that lowest level,
Yeah.
there was a door that you could walk straight into Eagle Creek. It's very complex and
We have some areas where they did CMU infill themselves.
Okay.
But there are other areas where there's doors, but they're locked and secure.
Bruce, did you have a question on structural? That was-
No, it's it's tied to bedrock,
Yeah.
it's not tied to the
Yeah.
foundation at
Yeah.
all?
Yeah, we're not looking to connect to
Footing, I mean,
any of the
floor.
systems of, now, knowing any project like this, you know, we're basing our design on what you can see. There's a lot you can't see. So it's a complex history in terms of how this property evolved over time. So we see bedrock, it's hard to know exactly where it is. Once things are removed, there's kind of some field engineering that often can happen and is needed as part of final submittals by the contractor. Once they expose the area, they're gonna submit shop drawings on their design that would meet the intent of this design.
So it might need footings.
Yeah, depending on where rock is and is not, it could create a foundation. That's the biggest change, is
Yep.
the foundation system. We just went through this exact same scenario in Gardner, it's not too far down the street, obviously, for a theater demolition that we had to backfill against a building to remain, and created a similar wall. Theirs was a lot smaller, but had to be pinned to rock and allow that backfill to occur against that building. A few details on some roof edges on Building 9, Eagle Creek. Eagle Creek roof abuts a building to be demolished, so when that building is removed, you're gonna have to repair their leading edge of their roof, and there's some details on that. It's the similar edge detail for Building 2. So that's the high-level overview of the demolition project. I can talk about costs, which are always fun. Unless you want to jump into some questions before we do that.
Any questions? Jeff?
A little bit confused, that first picture you showed,
Let's see.
just a little, not picture, that first design.
The first plan. This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the gray is what's coming down. right?
Correct.
Correct.
And as we're looking to the left is the Eagle Creek building,
Right here. Yep.
That's to remain.
and where's the canal?
Canal. It's here.
Connecticut River.
Here.
What's,
So-
what's
there's
on
a
the
little-
right there?
Here.
Yeah.
So that's the there's a paved parking area
Oh, okay.
down here, and then there's that other concrete silo and the partially demolished site. I forget the name of that
And
site.
back there.
And down here,
Yeah.
which abuts So,
We're just gonna use this area for staging and things like
So
that.
one of the buildings you're tearing down is attached to the Eagle Creek building, it looks like there.
yes, right here. So there would
Any
be,
question marks for that?
there's always questions on old buildings. We documented everything we could possibly see. The structural elements of building 5 do go into the building 9 wall. So when those beams are removed, there'll be beam pockets where the beams once existed. So there's 80 or 90 beam pockets that would be filled in. Some masonry repair work on the outside of that wall. There's a bunch of pipe hangers and strapping and pipes that would be cut flush in that wall and then plugged. So there's a lot of history on the outside of that wall that would be removed as much as you can.
And the backfill, can you just point to where that is?
The backfill? Yeah, the backfill would
On
be,
this map.
yeah, right here.
Oh.
So Canal Road, to drop down to the lowest elevation, the
Yeah,
lowest
yeah.
elevation is about a 25-foot drop.
It's very deep.
But I thought you said you needed to put up a freestanding concrete wall. Where's that gonna be?
Right here.
Okay.
So the backfill. The challenge, and there's probably other ways to dice this up, is to try to create a backfill plan that doesn't push drainage into their building is challenging. So you could grade it away from the building, but now you're gonna get stormwater preferentially flowing towards their lowest level, which creates challenges also. We'd like to avoid doing new construction out here, but due to the challenge of trying to keep Eagle Creek operational, the solution we came up with was this retaining wall system here.
The building at kind of the top of where you were pointing where Eagle Creek is, right? So there's like an L that, or a jut that sticks
Yep,
out too.
yep.
So is the grading gonna kind of go away from the buildings and then kind of slope down, or?
So that would be some fine grading during demolition, and so when the pitch comes down, it'll pitch this way, and then we'll send the backfill and create a little bit of a swale in here,
Right.
just to push.
The water back
The
out.
bush, short of putting in new structures, putting in a trench drain or something here, there may be some field conditions identified that we could take advantage of. There's a lot of, some things that we ended up not looking at is there's a lot of penetrations in these slabs, and you mentioned it, Bruce, that you could potentially route stormwater in some convenient way to get down into a tail race.
Okay.
Some of those things may be identified and discussed during the demolition. We're not proposing it as an active solution right now.
Good.
Probably just worth mentioning that permitting is in progress. We've gone through the Conservation Commission and Natural Heritage. They're requiring a botanist to be on site to make sure that the rare tufted hairgrass is protected and not disturbed during the demolition. Yeah, that's a natural heritage requirement.
Nothing's easy
And
anymore.
Mass Historic is also, we're in the process of getting permitting from Mass Historic because it is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. So that's something that's in progress, and we're working with our local Montague Historic Commission to provide comments to Mass
Okay.
Historic.
So we have an order of conditions from the Montague Conservation Commission, so that's good. On the Mass Historic piece, they consider it an historic resource, and they want to see mitigation. So that level of mitigation needs to be discussed. Often sites like this, mitigation is photo recordation,
It's what?
archival. The Mass Historic is looking for
Right.
discussion with the local historic commission to discuss some level of mitigation to the demolition that's occurring,
Yeah,
because it's an historic resource.
Through photographs like.
Photographs, documenting the history of the building before it is demolished.
Good. Okay, any other questions?
yeah.
I'm just gonna say, I'm gonna be a taskmaster, we have 5 minutes, so
Sure.
we really should get to budget, yes.
You weren't tasked at all to make any evaluation of whether these buildings are viable beyond holding up Eagle Creek. Is that a correct statement?
There's building 1 and 2 you looked at, and you looked at those as wide relief of remaining, and you found that they should be taken down at some point.
So every building here is in a stage of structural decay.
Right.
So the question is there enough financial resources to save a building? Anything can be saved with endless amounts of resources. The buildings here are, in a state of structural decay, some worse off than others. Some of the more significant areas are in and around Eagle Creek, where Building 4 and 9 connect. So it is a challenging set of circumstances that continue to worsen as time goes on.
Where is the pedestrian bridge currently?
Right here.
It's there, okay. All right, I see it.
Which have some live utilities that go over it.
Okay,
So budget, big picture, not including contingency, this is about a $2 million abatement and demolition project. Now, good that everyone's sitting. The wall, that concrete wall that would need to be constructed to help preserve Eagle Creek is about a $500,000 wall. So it's a significant portion of the budget after all is said and done. Certainly, after today, we can have more detailed discussions if there's other value engineering options to look at what could happen, but you have over $500,000 fix to help with the structural issues here.
596 seems closer to 600 to me.
The other big ticket item is the abatement piece. You have close to $500,000 of abatement, asbestos abatement, and removal of hazardous building materials that are throughout the building. So there's a significant amount of environmental removal to support demolition. So you can see the individual line items of where things fall. But those were the larger ticket items with respect to the project.
Any other questions?
And the mobilization fee must have put a large number on mobilization.
So we had some general conditions with respect to insurance and things of that nature. Mobilization is, depending on the phases, is generally spread through these line items.
Okay.
We do have a premium related to access issues.
Okay.
Just with the canal, there's premiums with types of equipment, slower, things of that nature. We went through the similar bid when we did the fire cleanup next door
Yep.
and dealing with some of those premiums and challenges of access.
Just one more item to include. We have a bid alternate for a permanent fence construction along Building 3 after the project is completed. We identified that as an alternate.
So not an expensive item, but an option to build a permanent fence along the edge for safety primarily. It's quite a drop
To the river.
to the river. Probably something that, if this project does happen, to look at measures, because other parts of the river access is fairly restricted. But now you'd have a wide open area that invites onlookers.
Is that where the grasses are? On the side of the fence?
The grasses?
Yes.
Which grasses?
The bottom, what's the button that says the watch?
Oh, down in the river.
Yeah, it'll actually be constructed right into the foundation of Building 3.
But
Yeah.
the other side of it is
It's the Connecticut
Correct.
River bank.
bank with the
With
grasses
grasses,
on it
yeah.
that we'll be watching.
That's why
The
we're not allowed
grasses
to
are
go
under
over.
the loading dock.
Yeah, I think they're more in this general.
Oh, in that area, okay.
Yeah.
What are they called, Walter?
I believe it's tufted hair grass.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
We don't envision a lot of disturbance in and around this area. It'll only be for a period of time to gain access to this portion of Building 3. So it'll be very limited as far as disturbance in that area, and then it'll be restored.
Okay,
So real quick, just to remind you that this project does not have funding to be implemented right now. There are no grant sources that fund demolition currently, although we're working with our legislators to look into the possibility of opening that as an avenue as part of the new economic development bond bill. But the town does have funding for abatement through mass development grant for $250,000 and the town appropriation from a few years ago. So that is a project that we're looking to advance. I'll probably be working with these same gentlemen to come up with a set of specs for just doing the abatement and advancing that in the next few months, hopefully.
Okay, so I think our next steps are, the documents are fairly fresh to town, I understand, so we'll need to give staff some time to review, make some comments, and if we need additional time from you folks to come back out, we'll have to have that discussion, but
Sure.
see where it goes, okay?
Sure.
Anything else? Good. Well, thank you. Good details.
Thank you.
You know that's my pet peeve.
Yeah.
All right. So now on to our normal agenda minutes for, again, thanks, June 3rd. I'm not quite ready, so we'll hold off. Anybody have anything for public comment period? Okay. Tom Bergeron, with some personnel stuff for work with you on. We see there's a little change to item 4.
Oh, like we just said.
So our first is appoint Jamie McCoskey, DPW shop foreman, grade E, step 2.
Correct,
Effective 6/17.
yes. He's our mechanic, Brian, our other shop foreman has left, went to a different job, and Jamie has stepped up since he's been gone and proven himself in this position. He'll be going into the NAGE union, which literally has a 1-year probation period.
Okay.
So it'll be good for him, good for us. Things have improved even since he's stepped up the month that Brian's been gone now. So
So I'll entertain that motion.
I'll make that motion.
Motion's made and seconded to appoint Jamie Matoski to grade E, step 2, rate of $22.21 an hour, and his title is shop foreman. Any other discussion?
I'll just note that he will not be eligible for a step increase on
July
July 1st because he's entering a new position within 3 months of the new fiscal year.
Okay, all right,
Yep.
any other discussion, comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so voted unanimous. Next is appoint Alexander Milton, DPW lead mechanic, UE grade D, step 2, effective 6/25.
yeah, he's coming to us from Goulet Trucking. He's a good truck mechanic, and he also works on the smaller vehicles, which is an interest to us, seeing though we have so many. I'm starting him out at step 2 because he was offered better possibilities with another company, but it would be a company he would get laid off for in the winter, so he's found that our 4 days attracted him, plus the extra benefits and on-call. So he's gonna be probably a good asset to our department.
Okay, again, I'll entertain a motion to appoint Alexander Milton to DPW lead mechanic position, 40 hours per week, grade D, step 2, rate of $20.57 an hour.
I'll make that motion.
And I'll second it. Any discussion, questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
And he will be part of the UE contract.
And last one is a cell phone stipend for Jamie Matoski, $577 a week, effective 6/17. This is the standard that you give
Correct.
supervisors for.
Yes,
Okay.
Have to order parts.
yeah.
I'll make a motion, I'll make that motion.
Okay, motion's made and seconded to authorize the cell phone stipend. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we'll be unanimous.
Perfect. Thank you again, gentlemen.
Great, thank you, Tom. How's that too for your staffing? Are you up to full?
Yep. Full staff.
now?
Yes, we are. And the last 2 hires are working out great. So I have no complaints. The guys are all getting along. Will's working out beautifully.
And you have summer help hired as well?
I got one summer help kid in, and he's fantastic. I asked him if he wanted to stay here, and he said yes. I said, let's talk. Let's stay in school. See you later.
Okay, great. Next we have John Dobus coming to see us regarding Light State. Hey, John.
Good evening.
All right, let's see here. Yes, so this is just an entertainment permit for our night skate. On the agenda, it says, it indicates all the night skates that we have, but on the actual application, it could just have our first date, which is this Friday, the 21st. So it's really up to the board if we just want to scribble in July 27th and September 14th. It's pretty much going to be the same entertainment, which is a DJ. And
This permit or request I see has those.
okay,
All those dates on it, so.
okay. And we're partnering with River Culture as well.
Yes, yeah.
So
Yeah, there's a picture of handwriting. Yeah,
I'll make a motion that the board authorize request for assembly, public demonstration, use of public property for River Culture Parks and Rec for the town of Montague at Unity Skate Park. The date of assembly will be June 21st, July 27th, and September 14th. The time will begin at 6 p.m. and at 9:30 p.m. It'll be approximately 50 participants. And it's music for skate night events, DJs and or live bands. And the police chief has signed off on it. And just one question for John. Which, are these Friday night or a Saturday night? Or?
the first one is Friday night. Because that's National Get Out and Skateboard Night. So typically our first skate night or night skate falls on that date. And July 27th is a Saturday, as well as September 14th.
all right. So I will second the motion. Is there any other discussion, questions? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so we're unanimous. The next one is an entertainment permit, building bridges mural unveiling for June 29th, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. I didn't see that in my packets. Was that the outlay document?
That would be the second.
Oh, okay, I was looking one faster. So this is around the mural that's being painted and.
Yes, the official unveiling of the mural that's on our final wall, so to speak, the western wall that's facing the main parking lot, the building bridges mural. And the event's going to include painting and storytelling, discussion, drumming, and dancing. And Montague resident Alyssa Cirilli actually coordinated this entire affair with artists from 6 different indigenous tribes. So she was the driving force. She couldn't be here this evening, and it's going to be a full day, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. We're going to close down half the parking lot at Unity Park, closest to the field house and the mural as well. So it's going to be a full day affair.
You can certainly see it.
Yes, it's wonderful.
Great. Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to allow the permit for June 29th for the building bridges mural unveiling.
I'll make that motion and also request that we waive the fee.
Okay, I'll second the fee waive, so I'll be a friendly amendment. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so vote unanimous.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for that.
Suzanne Lovato. This is our annual.
It sure is. I know. Homelands Festival, it comes along every single year, and I'm always surprised how fast it comes along. But here we are getting ready for, I think it's the 6th year we've been doing this. River Culture's been working with the Nolan Beaker project on this very important event. This year is really exciting because we're going to be going to 2 days, Saturday and Sunday. And then also in between on Saturday night, there is a huge show at the Shade Theater. So interest in Native American history and culture continues to grow in the area because of this event and the activity around the Nolan Beaker project, talks they have at the Discovery Center all year, and then certainly the Battlefield Grant work that's been done over the last, I guess that's 4 years, has really grown an interest in this part of our culture, and so they wanted to expand, and I thought it would be a good idea for me to help them do so. But one of the challenges we've had many years in a row is rain, and not just rain on that day, but rain as the water table holds down at Unity Park. I was just down there, we had obviously lots of rain yesterday, I was just down there for a walk this morning, and the place is pretty much flooded. Like there would be no way to set up today. So in light of that, in light of the amount of money that the Nolan Beaker brings to this, I think they're pushing probably $12,000 worth of investments to do this for 2 days. We came up with 2 plans. And one plan, Plan A, is that we do it the same as last year. We close the First Street down, so we have a nice quiet area, and then we set up down at Unity Park pretty much on the area on the map that is shown, but on each side of the bike path. People have come many years in a row will recognize that configuration. But if we can't do that, because either it is raining that day or it had rained very seriously, throughout July, we're going to move the entire thing up to the Discovery Center. And that is just out of necessity. We just really need to do it. That decision can't really be made until about 4 days beforehand. And so if we go to Plan B, we're mostly dealing with permissions from DCR as opposed to what's in front of you now, which is from the contract from First Light. First Street would not be closed. As a matter of fact, that would all be the same. And we would set up inside the Discovery Center. We'd have several large tents on DCR property, and then we're thinking of putting one right out in front of where the Cumberland Farms building is there. And we don't really have a map about what that might look like right now. That one that would be on town property would either be for food or it would be for entertainment. So all the music and everything would be downtown for 2 days. So I'm asking, and of course I would be the person who would talk with you guys and let everybody at Town Hall know what's going on, let the police chief and the fire chief know what plan we're selecting. And it's twice as much work for us up front, but if the weather doesn't cooperate, we are kind of on our heels, on that day. So we really feel like it's worth doing the extra planning ahead of time and having this be our kind of default thing that we do every year. So we're going to give it a try this year. It puts the music downtown, which is why I'm here mostly. Music kind of will start around 11:30 in the morning and continue about 6 o'clock at night on both days. And it's amplified, but the instruments aren't like electric guitars or anything like that. So it's on the quieter side, but it is absolutely downtown, no question. So I'm here to gain your approval for both plans and see what it is, A and B.
Okay, so let's do these in order. First of all, I'll entertain a motion to approve executing the agreement with First Light Hydro for the licensing agreement should we continue with Plan A.
I'll make that motion.
And I'll second it. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that's taken care of. The next would be Plan A, Plan B. So Plan A is to allow the use of public property, not Peston Park, or the Montagues Center Common, which is the area along First Street, as Suzanne described, on both August 3rd and 4th, from approximately 11 a.m. to 6 p.m., including closing the road. The only thing we'll need is the police chief's signature.
That paperwork, I think, was just delivered and it's downstairs in my box. I'm sorry, I forgot to bring that along.
If you bring it back up, we
Thank
can
you,
do
I'll do that.
signatures right
I'll
after,
do that,
okay?
thank you.
Okay, so that's first. Okay with that one?
Yes. I'll make that motion.
Okay, so motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So vote unanimous. Next is the use of public property plan B. I always like the plan A and B.
Thank you.
That would be the, for the use of the town property in front of the Discovery Center, as building as it's known as the old Cumberland Farms building. Again, on August 3rd and 4th, beginning approximately 10:30 a.m., going to around 6 p.m. Same number of people, and would be tents and so forth. So I'll entertain that motion.
Yeah, the tents are gonna be professionally put up by Paul Rediger. He does a great job.
Yes.
They'll be down by Monday.
I'll make that motion.
And I'll second it. Any discussion, questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So what do you want?
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I have a
Bye.
question.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Suzanne, I didn't quite catch what the status, has DCR approved this?
DCR, that application would be going in through the Nolan Beaver project, so I'm assuming that they put it in. There've been many emails back and forth. So, if it is Plan B, they, because they have their insurance, they're responsible for taking care of everything over at DCR. So, yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
They've had some events at the Discovery Center outside. I think there was another last year maybe, or the
Yeah,
year before. And it was actually, I mean, there's quite a bit of room there. and it
There's
was
quite a bit
really
of room, and you
nice.
can still see the river. It's not the spectacular views that you get down here. It's definitely a Plan B, but it's much higher land and it's much drier land.
Much drier. And
So-
so let's see how
So we'll
July
see,
goes.
we'll see how it goes. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Suzanne. Okay, next we have Jennifer Lively.
As long as she doesn't object to going early.
I don't mind.
And Jennifer is requesting permission to organize and clean up the paths in the woods in the area that stretch between 3rd Street and 7th Street and Park Street and High Street. As Michael Nelson is not here tonight, I'll participate in the discussion a bit. Jennifer is my niece, for public record, although there's really no financial interest in any of this, but, so why don't you fill us in on what you're wanting to do?
Sure. So there's a couple of us neighbors that neighbor the property, and we are just concerned that it needs to be cleaned up. Because it's town property, we wanted your blessing. In preparation, we've done some looking into how to organize a cleanup. We were gonna do it July 6th from 9 to 12. We collect materials and gather them on the grassy area on High Street. The DPW has agreed to pick up the materials that we've collected. We do have a Sharps container donated by Franklin County Solid Waste District, just in case it becomes necessary. Bags and gloves are gonna be donated by First Light Power. And we have participants, a waiver for participants to sign. That came from the Source to Sea cleanup, and we just adopted it for use for the town of Montague. We were kind of inspired by their cleanup and modeled this after how they do their cleanups. They do one in the fall. There's a lot of ground cover, leaves and whatnot. So now that it's more clear, you can see all the debris. If everything goes well, we'd like to do it again, like a yearly thing in the spring. Things that we've seen in there: broken glass, tents, tarps, makeshift stoves, food containers, wire temporary fencing, a pocket knife, and single-use plastic of all kinds. So,
No needles?
not that we've seen, but we're prepared just in case.
There used to be a wicked dirt bike track in there. One particular group of kids.
Yeah.
It's impressive.
So,
Montage.
oh, yeah, computer. We'll fix that. Sorry. So, as you know, the public uses it to connect downtown to the hill section. Kids go through there with the walking school bus. There's a lot of wildlife. We've seen, the neighbor and I that are organizers have seen deer multiple times over there, lots of birds. So that's kind
And
of.
what's the date you would like to do this?
July 6th, and we're hoping that it'll inspire people to take care of it and not litter and abuse the area.
And bicycles like to ride down that.
Yeah.
And with all the debris you pick up, you said you'll have some sort of a container or work with DPW?
Yeah,
or
so
how's that
DPW is gonna pick up what we gather on the grassy section on High Street. bordering the woods there. It's a nice flat area, off the road, and then we have bags and gloves being donated, so everything will be enclosed and people will be protected.
If you don't mind, I'd like to suggest that in the unlikely event that, a used syringe or something is found, that you can contact the Montague Police.
Okay,
And
yep,
make sure that we have somebody
absolutely.
who has, the best possible training in handling of those kind of things. We just don't want to expose anyone to risk
Absolutely.
unnecessarily.
I agree. And they gave us a list, the Sources to Sea Cleanup gave us a list of anything that could be hazardous. And so we will, of course, leave those in place and notify.
Okay, any questions?
It should be there.
Great. Yeah, we'll
Okay.
be letting all the neighbors know, so.
Okay, great. Well, I'll entertain a motion to allow the cleanup of 3rd Street and 7th Street between Park and High Street.
I'll make that motion.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion?
Do we want to throw a date on it?
Yes, July 6th.
And I'll make that edit there.
Okay, any rain date or anything like that, or just, you're gonna do it
Rain or
anytime?
shine, yep.
Okay, motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So voted unanimous.
Thank you.
One thing thank you, Jennifer. One thing I noticed, Steve, was I think that there was a cleanup project in Miller's Falls last summer, maybe. I'm not sure what we did, I don't really remember anything this formal.
This is the first time that I've seen something this formal. People oftentimes individually will take on these kind of tasks, and they can do that at their discretion. I think it's nice to have the process. It assures a degree of organization.
Just thinking if there are folks in Miller's Falls who want to do it, I would certainly encourage it. I think it was great they did it, but maybe this could serve as the documents here could serve as
A template.
Yeah, we just thought it'd protect us for the organizing of it, to, because it's not just us, we'd be inviting other folks to join us, and also protect the town, so.
Good, okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we have Airport Commissioners Brian and Peter Bollinger.
Good evening.
Maybe out here before 8 o'clock tonight.
I think, Mr. Chair, I was driving down Miller's Falls Road last Saturday night, and I saw Brian out by the road cutting brush and weed backing after 7 o'clock at night.
Dedicated town employee.
He works a flexible schedule.
Yes.
His employer seems to be very flexible with that. I will say, and I've said it before, and I'll say it publicly, I don't think the airport has looked as good as it has in the last year.
I agree, and it's all thanks to Brian.
Thank you. So, especially this time of the year now that the grass is green,
And it's growing.
it's growing. Yes, it's quite a handful. So.
Stop fertilizing.
One of my pet peeves is the brush growing along the fence line, and that's been cut back, and you guys did a great job with that. And, that Brian's gonna keep that in
Yep.
check from now on,
Yep.
so that's good.
Was that a grant that you obtained that
Yes.
improved the fencing and cleared it for us as well?
Two separate grants. So once we did the fencing along the industrial boulevard, we evaluated afterwards. We were able to get a grant, 100% state funding to do the clearing. It just grown beyond our capacity with the equipment. So now that it's back to where it should be, and we've graded off the soil, we can mow it very easily with our mowing equipment. So.
Very good. Okay, so you're here tonight to talk to us about another grant that you've.
Yeah, this is just a small one, for $12,500.04. I'm not quite sure why there was 4 cents thrown on there, but that was the total. So, and this is just another standard airport safety and maintenance program as part of the Leading by Example Green Initiative through the state. This was the purchase of a battery-powered John Deere Gator. 100% state funding. There's no local share, just like the other 10 or 11 what we managed to do this year.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to execute and accept the Mass DOT Aeronautics Grant OB5 Gator, GATOR 19, and the amount of $12,500.04.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chair.
A motion has been seconded. Any discussion? Questions, Jeff?
What's a gator?
It's a small all-terrain vehicle. It's kind of like a small utility vehicle, roughly the size of a golf cart. For us, with the rough terrain we have and the newly cleared fence lines, it's gonna allow us to gain access to areas that we don't wanna bring the new pickup truck.
Okay.
Hopefully being battery powered, it will have some type of positive feedback, being that we're not burning any gas in it, so.
Good. Okay, any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so for the unanimous. Next you have a couple of FY20 appointments that'll be coming up in the next few weeks.
Yeah, so
Next
for,
week, maybe.
yeah, next week, I'm thinking next week, yeah. Yeah, so we have two positions on the commission that are up for reappointment, and for the first time in quite some time, we actually have an individual from the community that's interested in filling a position. So we have 3 interested individuals for 2 positions. Per Mass General Law, it falls on the hands of the Select Board to appoint the members. So I can't really put too much information in, but I have a brief rundown of just basic background for each individual. David Brule, who's been on our commission for quite some time now, a couple of terms. He's been a good activist for us. He's great because he has the tribal communications with all the issues we've had up there in the past. So he kind of acts as a good window for that. He's also pretty involved in town with the media relations and whatnot too, which has been an asset for us as we try to move forward. The other individual that's currently serving that is seeking reappointment would be Brian Carroll. He's been on for 30 years, maybe 25, 30 years. He was a resident in town. He no longer lives here, but he.
Where's he live now, Brian?
I think it's a Hadley, maybe. Because of Hadley, yeah. So he doesn't live in town anymore. And he did have some family living in town. I don't believe they've passed away since then. But he's brings to the table the experience with dealing with the FAA and DOT, as 30 plus years of doing the same stuff. So he's been there through the kind of the rebuilding of the airport 2014 and 15. The other individual that would be new to us would be Seth Rutherford, who is the proprietor of the 253 Pharmacy. He showed an interest in the airport. He doesn't have much of an aviation background, but as far as a business owner, especially a business owner located on the airport industrial park, it's kind of nice to have that. Right now, we don't have a business owner on there. We have a couple of members that deal with finances and whatnot, but I think it'd be nice to have somebody from the community who's a business owner as well. And I also found out after talking with him, he has an extensive background with basically grassland habitats, endangered species, kind of all the stuff that we're dealing with right now. So,
Interesting.
That was,
we got the grass growing really quickly.
yes, he did.
The lawn, I should call it.
Yes.
Yeah, he owned a landscaping and irrigation firm on Nantucket, I believe,
okay.
and I believe he was also, going way back to our first conversation, he was really at the forefront of working with the state to create some regulation to protect, the water supply from inappropriate use of fertilizers and chemicals. So again, it seems to fit very well with some of our concerns.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not a secret that we have a lot of environmental concerns. We have a lot of tribal concerns. So anything that's a resource in house that doesn't cost us anything is kind of nice to have.
Sure.
So this is the tough part. I think in the history of the airport, we haven't had more people than we have positions. So I leave it up to the.
Okay, did you get, I see we have an email from David for the reappointment to the select board. Did any others, did you receive any others? Does Wendy have them, or-
Should have
There was
been
one from Seth Rutherford, I
There
know.
was we had an email stating interest from David Brule. There was another one from Brian Carroll. Both the Davids and Brians were just, I'd asked them just to email saying I have an interest in continuing serving
Sure,
for a reappointment. So I did forward both those to Wendy and as well as Seth's. They were definitely not like a big,
Yeah.
5-page
that's fine.
document. So
I just saw only this one in our packet, but maybe they came in after. Okay.
Question, do you have any alternates on the board, or?
We haven't been configured that way in the past, but I would think that would be fine.
I was just wondering about that, since we have three people and there's only two positions, could possibly one be an alternate.
Are we looking for a decision tonight, or do
No.
we really
I think-
debate it next week when?
I think the appointments are gonna be presented to you by Wendy next week.
All right, next week,
And
okay.
so, this'll be, obviously it'll be a difficult choice.
Okay.
I know the board has in the past indicated an interest in having that local business connection, in particular
Yes.
the airport industrial park and the airport, but it seems like we have three really good choices here.
Yeah, it's not a bad situation in the fact that we have some community interest in the airport, which hasn't been there in the past, so I think that, once again, that speaks volumes for the direction we're heading right now, that there's someone else interested that's not looking just to get on there to shut the airport down. But it's a unique situation,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, I know David, and, from the various events in town and seeing him at meetings, and I think he does bring a good skill set. I've met Brian in the past, but don't really know him, and Seth I've met through his meetings here, and he's really, one thing I'll say, he's really committed, of course, and that's evidenced by the facility that they're constructing and the interest he has there. And it sounds like he also has a skill set that go kind of in a different direction than just aeronautics that might really be a benefit to us. I think we'll need to contemplate those and make a decision.
This is one of the times I say it's better that we don't have to make the decision. I'll leave it up to the board.
Okay.
But yeah, if you need any additional information, we'd be happy to provide it as needed, and we'll keep up the good work as we go into next year. Our new co-op student will be starting July 1st and continuing for a year and a half now. So
Okay.
we are moving forward.
Can we request that the town administrator check and see if we could have an alternate on that?
We can look into that, sure.
Yeah, I think Brian and I can kind of tag team on
yeah.
that a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. The only real reference we have is the Mass General Law chapter that says that the airport commission could be comprised of not less than one member with aeronautical experience and then an odd number. So I don't know if it deals with alternates. We'd have to take a look at it. And we'll
Right, there's
see what
nothing in
happens.
our bylaws that would specify it that I'm aware of off the top of my head.
Okay.
The general laws is we have to have between 3 and 11 members, an odd number between 3 and 11, and at least one with aeronautic experience.
And currently you have,
We have 5
Five.
members now and 3 with aeronautical experience.
okay. So if we, so Seth does not have aeronautical experience, so that would drop it to 2?
Yes.
Because David has, okay,
Well,
but you'd still have at least 2 of the 5.
David doesn't have David does not, Brian does. And we have 2 others besides Brian who have aeronautical experience.
Okay. Great.
I guess skydiving counts as aeronautical experience. So
Okay. All right, very good. Okay.
thank you so much.
Take it, yeah.
Thank you.
Take it over to Vice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Okay, we're doing well on time, so let's talk about the GMTA lease.
Sure thing. So, as you might recall, we had a previous conversation. It was in the local media, and in fact, it was a conversation that occurred at a GMTA meeting where Mayor Martin of Greenfield had indicated Greenfield's concern relative to signing a lease that had automatic renewal terms because they have been pondering a series of capital improvement projects which might, in some circumstance, require that they move their fire department into the GMTA building, or that they might desire to. Somewhere different, exactly. There are all sorts of questions that have been raised about whether that would be a suitable facility for short-term use by a fire department, et cetera. I can't comment on that. We had our follow-up GMTA meeting last week. We discussed the lease. Essentially, some things have kind of occurred in the interim between those meetings, including a decision by the Greenfield Town Council to delay any final commitment to a library project till next November. A lot of their capital agenda is going to be waiting until next November, which actually would have been outside of
Next
the present.
November is this coming November?
This coming November, November
Okay,
19, which would have been outside of the lease period that was originally being proposed by the town of Greenfield, city of Greenfield. They have asked to sort of take a couple steps back, so that they can consider what their best and right options are. There's going to be significant turnover just by virtue of resignations, not only in the mayoral position, but also on their town council.
Okay.
So there's a lot that's up in the air right now.
Okay.
We talked last week, and I suggested that the present lease terms, which continue unabated, are somewhat less advantageous than renewing the lease for a period of time, because there's no escalator for the cost. Normally there's a 5% cost escalator. They're going to come back to us with a proposed next step.
They being
the
Town
city
Greenfield.
of Greenfield.
I'm sorry.
And, I've also had some communication with GMTA. To this point in time, they've not yet identified another location where they could. FRTA, thank you. We're helping each other here, I like it. With FRTA, they've not identified another location that could host, all of their different activities, mechanics, bays and maintenance, as well as storage, as well as office administration. What they're pretty clear on is that it would be a significant cost impact moving anywhere. It would also probably be unlikely that they would move speculatively. So just the uncertainty is unlikely to create the impetus for them to move at this point, I think, just because there'd be a lot of cost involved. And again, they haven't identified that location. The town has tried to present them with various options and facilitate conversations that might be appropriate with any sites that we might be aware of. But at this point, none of them appear promising.
Okay.
So we're in a bit of a holding pattern at this point in time. We can't force the city of Greenfield to enter into a new or different lease, nor can they force us to enter into a lease that doesn't afford reasonable protections to ensure that there's no disruption in public transportation. There has been sort of this ongoing question of Greenfield's interest in purchasing the facility, and my initial indication to the city, was that we'd need to have some assurances relative to the ability of public transportation to keep operating before we could entertain that. They have not approached us about buying it at this point in time. There was, I believe, $4.5 million in a capital request that was approved for progress towards building an anaerobic digester, which might be immediately adjacent to the site. So there could be a scenario where the town of Greenfield, city of Greenfield, decides that they want to purchase the facility, but they want to make that, but they also are willing to offer FRTA some long-term security through the period of time that would get them to their building here. I propose that would be the best and easiest case scenario in terms of ever finalizing a sale of the property. But right now, I've said a lot, and I've tried to give a lot of context, but there's really nothing to report. We're just in a pause mode.
Okay, where is, the one last question I have is, where is FRTA in the process of their, I would guess call it pared down facility that they're looking at?
They're in the design phase. They hope to complete that design phase by the fall so that they can do bidding over the winter and be in a position to begin construction in the spring of 2020. It would likely take a year to achieve completion of that project. So, they're still on at least an 18 to 24 month timeline, I would expect, to realize their project.
Okay. All right. Well, let's just kind of keep us posted, and it's unfortunate the construction process takes so long for those things. Jeff?
Remind me, I assume a purchase and sale is part of that, or with us, right?
A purchase and sale for, you're talking about for the
parcel
land,
of
for the
land.
parcel of land?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's certain terms and conditions. They've been previously discussed. We're waiting for them to come back to us with that. I think that'll be contingent on the final design, because they're trying to work through engineering questions relative to, is it better to run a sewer line straight from Turnpike Road, or is it actually easier from a site planning perspective to run something from Greenfield Road through the back parcel, because there's lots of different questions relative to grading, et cetera. So until that's finalized, that plan is finalized, and it'll be discussed, I think, broadly, we really can't finalize the purchase and sale and et cetera.
Okay. Good. Well, thanks for that short but informative update.
Okay, I think I got it within 5 minutes. The next item on the agenda, when the town issued its bonding in January, several of the projects that were bonded, basically moving from short-term notes to long-term notes, were items of consequence to the water pollution control facility that were paid for through sewer user fees. In those cases, in some instances, there's an acceleration of payments of certain things as part of the agreements. There was some acceleration of payment of certain accounts for short-term held debt from the water pollution control facility. So this is really a housekeeping article. We were a little under $26,000 over in terms of the required expenditures for the debt account for the water pollution control facility. So this process, in accordance with MGL Chapter 44, Section 33B, for transferring funds across line items in a departmental, across budgets within the enterprise fund, would have us moving $26,000 from our underspent solid waste disposal account to cover those debt fees.
Okay, and so that would be in line with the motion that we have in front of us that Finance Committee approved, which was, the motion would read something like, or exactly like, to transfer $26,000 from the Water Pollution Control Facility Solid Waste Disposal Budget 661-5-440-5280 with $15,500 going to WTCF number 17 5314 Pump Station Principal, account 6615-710-5941. $10,000 going to Water Pollution Control Facility number 15 91213. Those are all, I think, town meeting article items. 91213 Industrial Boulevard Principal, and that would be account 6615-710-5946, and $500 going to Water Pollution Control Facility short-term interest, account number 66157525925.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and I'll second it.
This was unanimously approved by the Finance Committee.
Okay, so any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so far unanimous. Thank you, Carolyn, for providing that absolutely worded motion so every number is correct. I hope I read it right. Okay.
Okay, so the next item, as you are aware, the town took through tax title 25 6th Street, otherwise referenced as the St. Anne's Rectory, some years ago, preceded my being here. And there have, as we've done in the past, we prefer to dispose of land, particularly really critical lots in an area such as this, right in our downtown on 6th Street, through an RFP process that assures that the ultimate use is, well, that it goes to a responsible developer and that the use is consistent with the downtown livability plan or other applicable plans in town. Walter took a lead in drafting, and I provided critical commentary, I guess you'd say, relative to an RFP for disposition of that property. And we're looking for your permission to release this RFP. Couple details that I would like to note: we did speak with 2 different commercial real estate agents and talked about, you know, oftentimes these are released with very low figures in terms of a minimum bid.
Yes.
The criteria virtually always ultimately come down to the characteristics of the proposed development, not the amount of money that is received. This one is going to be sent out with your approval with a minimum, with a stated bid, $25,000 for the property. That's significantly under the assessed value, although the assessed value does not necessarily reflect certain complexities of the property, including the fact that it is not only adjacent to, but physically connected to the St. Anne's Church through the passageway that goes between those two buildings, owing to their long history of being a single property. There are, various zoning, permitting, and other questions that need to be resolved, and it would be the burden of the proposer to resolve those. There are also a number of conditions stated here, including that the front yard cannot be made into parking as part of the project, to maintain the consistency with the character of the property. It's getting less than what the assessed value is with a property like this is less of a concern at this point in our judgment, as we present it to you, than getting the best possible development. And that is looked at as one that will develop, that'll be commercial in nature, that will see it go back on the tax rolls, that will see a business or operation that is likely to provide additional foot traffic and interest in the center of Turner's Falls, that will be sort of mutually beneficial.
Right. I remember some work done around separating the property into two parcels. Was that ever executed?
They are two separate properties.
They are separate. There's a line down the middle of the, I call it the garage, but
yeah,
kind of the connector.
It goes through that connecting building, yes.
Okay.
Right along the driveway's edge of the St. Anne's driveway.
So the driveway was part of the rectory building or church?
No, it is part of the church.
Church, okay,
Yeah.
got it.
And that is another one of the development constraints here, is that there's no dedicated parking to this, although there's a significant amount of on-street parking in the area, and it's often underutilized, in particular if you go to the avenue.
Right.
And I've been in there in the past, and there's not much in there.
No, the building,
They had the fire.
yes, there was a fire in the building, parts of it are gutted.
Been gutted.
There's actually a large hole in the floor, in the first floor of the building. We've been having our DPW maintain the exterior of the building, trying to keep up and so that it doesn't look like it's an unkept building.
And a lot of the stairs are missing
Yeah.
inside.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely dilapidated and
Yeah.
in need of revitalization.
And at the same time, if you're in there, you're immediately impressed and excited by the prospect of redeveloping it, because a lot of the original features are still there, and it's
And
quite a
lot of
beautiful
history in that,
place.
Yes,
And it's actually kind of a big space, too.
it is. It is
We
a
have,
big building.
we have received lots of sort of soft indications of interest in the property in the past. We have no idea what kind of response we'll get to this, but we hope to release it almost immediately. We'll finalize it after consulting with legal counsel to make sure it's proper as to form, and we're looking for responses by August the 5th.
So this would be, the bid would be just a flat 25,000, we would tick, then there would be some screening if there were more than one.
Absolutely.
And then,
It-
I
and-
like the idea of having something that's a bit of a threshold, because it helps us, it's a step in proving that that whoever's bid on this is qualified, or not necessarily qualified, but serious about the redevelopment. When you get the dollar bid, sometimes there's a reason for that, but it also sometimes doesn't quite come to fruition, where if this is a much kind of more serious amount of money, it might help that.
Right. I think
process.
Montague is always open to realistic dreamers, and a project like this requires some capital and some investment,
Yes.
and this would be them putting skin in the game.
So you're looking for us to, enter a
ap-
motion to allow,
approve.
approve the
Approve us to finalize and release this RFP.
request for proposals. Okay, so I'll entertain that motion to
Oh.
release this.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and I'll second it. That would be to release the, request for proposals for the disposition of 2560 Turner's Falls Assessors Map 3, Lot 222.
So moved.
Any other discussion?
Well,
Yes.
so, this isn't a land development agreement.
This is not a land development agreement at this point.
Yeah. So when we,
They would enter into a purchase and sale, however, that would lead to such.
so, oh, okay. Because when we do a land development agreement, my understanding is that, you know, we pay pretty close attention to what they're proposing and how they're gonna finance.
Yes.
And that's
Is
required.
that what happens here, too?
Yes, this ultimately, they will also be responsible for meeting critical milestones in the project and seeing that redevelopment occurs.
Quite similar to others that we've done.
Yeah. Now,
A little different spin on them, but.
right, I think if one were to look at this, if we have an appropriate proposer, we'll bring it to the board and, you know, we'll make recommendation and we'll move to enter into that process of developing a purchase and sale / land development agreement. There is the possibility that we won't see an appropriate proposal, and in that case, we'll maintain our right to not award based on that. And we'll try to learn our lessons from there.
Yep.
So,
Okay.
Did you second that, Mr.
I
Chair?
seconded it, yes. Well, the official motion, I'll second, so we're all on the page. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, discretionary fund transfer request.
yes, so, we are looking to close out some accounts, and to strengthen a couple of others. The community development discretionary unallocated account has a balance in just in excess of $30,000. I thought that paperwork was going to be included in this packet, and I neglected to bring it, so I apologize. But what we're looking for the board to do would be to move $7,000 to the community development discretionary unsafe, unhealthy buildings account. That sum would bring it up to about $10,000 that we would have available. That way, if there is some urgent need for funding for, you know, whether it's dealing with an abandoned building that the town is owner of, et cetera, we have the flexibility to do that. Historically, our account balance was more in the $15,000 to $20,000 range. We drew that down 2 years ago and just never reappropriated to it because we didn't feel our overall unallocated account balance was high enough.
Okay,
So that would be the first one we'd be looking for.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to allocate from community development discretionary account 225-5-184-5200 to $7,000 for unsafe, unhealthy buildings, account number 225-5-184-5234.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, I'll second it. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion is unanimous. Next is similar for the bridge and the bell, fund a little deficit there.
Yes, it was a very small deficit of $126.01 that we're just trying to finish, and we'll close it out.
I'll make a motion to allocate from community development discretionary account number 225-5-184-5200, the amount of $126.01 for community development discretionary Lake Pleasant Bell and Bridge project, account number 225-5-184-5257.
I'll make that motion.
And if you don't mind adding to that motion, and to, following that transfer, close out the account.
And following that transfer, close the account.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, motion's made and seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
So will be unanimous. I'll make a motion to allocate from community development discretionary 225-5-184-5200, the amount of 27 cents for the community development discretionary senior center porch, account number 225-5-184-5279, and after said transfer, close the account.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. While we're on St. Anne, Senior Center front porch, I happened to go to that building a few weeks ago to cast my ballot, and the porch looks great, but now we must get it painted.
Yes, that's in process.
Good. Okay, and the last one is Community Development National Historic Register account allocation from account number 225-5-184-5274. That's the Millers Falls National Register account. $46.90 to Community Development Discretionary account 225-5-184-5200. And after the transfer, this is some unexpended funds in that account. You close out the account.
I'll make that motion.
Motion is made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so voted unanimous. Okay.
Our accountant thanks you.
Carolyn, happy?
Yes.
Well, those little things are important to get everything balanced at the end.
It certainly is. We have a scrutinous audit every year, and everything needs to be attended to.
Right up here too, so they sit around.
Well, it's important to have it, even though it seems like it's small. Those things hang for years, and before you know
It's a
it,
formidable
you spend
event.
$2,000 in auditing to find out where that 27 cents goes. Okay, next is some town admin business.
Yes, so next I'm gonna request a motion from the board to execute an agreement with R&H Roofing LLP of East Hampton for roof replacement at the Shea Theater and the Town Hall Annex in the total amount of $239,500. That includes the bid alternate, which was to replace the roof in the equipment room down below the stairwell here as well.
And how much do we allocate total for these?
We are
This is
still,
within the allocation, correct?
yeah, we still have approximately $20,000 contingency in the project. And I've spoken with our roof architect and our sort of local architect, project supervisor, and both feel very comfortable that we included a number of board feet for replacement on both roofs that is unlikely to be fully realized. So we're hopeful that the base cost will actually decline slightly.
Okay. Good.
Okay. I'll make a motion that the board authorize the agreement, the contract as presented.
Okay, I'll second the motion to execute the contract with R&H Roofing in the amount of $239,500. Any other discussion, questions? All those,
I'm sorry.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So vote unanimous.
I'll
Thank
just
you.
note
And
that we, August
timeframe?
on around the first week of August, depending on how the weather is. Flat roofing is even more weather dependent than your standard gable shingles roof. So
Well, I looked out the window here tonight and see wood. That's never a good thing to see on a roof. So I'm
It
glad
does leak down there.
I'm glad we're going to get some work done on that roof. It's important to protect that. And the Shea Theater, we've certainly been waiting for several construction cycles, so thanks for all your effort on this, Steve.
it will be
Okay,
exciting to have it done.
next is a change order for the Collie.
Yes. So we, as you know, received a bid that was well within our budget for that project. The project is being completed by Renaissance Builders. Chris Sawyer is our on-site supervisor. He's there every day. Things are going extremely well. We saw an opportunity to take care of a couple of additional areas where repointing was necessary. It'll be much cheaper to have them do it now. And we also decided that it made sense to have them attend to final repainting of windows that abut the Shea Theater roof, which were never permanently painted after last year's repair job on that side of the building. And so we have a change order in the total amount of $5,989.50 that we're looking for the board to endorse and approve, and allow the chair to sign.
Son.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, and I'll second to Authorize change order number 1 in the amount of $5,989.50, and the chair will sign. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So vote unanimous.
Okay, I
When
thought,
does that finish, by the way, just out of curiosity?
the initial estimate was about the first week of August. They are, at this point, they were hoping that they'd be able to paint the windows along Avenue A this week. It's a little iffy because of the weather. They've already completed all of the lower story masonry work along Avenue A. I think they'll then, I'm sorry, along 3rd Street. So they will shift to the windows there next. And then the most complicated part logistically is repairing where it looks like a chimney might have been removed immediately adjacent to the cutlery block. That roof line and those bricks there. So that's soon to come as well. The project seems to be on schedule, you know, notwithstanding the weather.
We had the first floor windows that are more of a historic varnished. I think we just had those done, didn't we? Even maybe it was that last year. Those are in good shape, or should we just?
No, all of the exterior varnish and all those windows will be done as well.
As well as-
We are having the stairway on 3rd Street redone, and all of the sort of like they look stone faced, but it's some kind of an aggregate pillars. Are also being repaired because some of those are kind of soft to the touch and crumbly.
Okay.
So this is a really substantial
Yes.
renovation. The great thing is that we're not seeing a need at this point to fully replace any of the windows. It's extremely expensive to do that. We had accounted for that possibility in a unit per cost basis in our bid package. And at this point, we may have to replace small pieces of windows, mullions or what have you, sills, but we are not,
Good.
at this point, thinking we have to replace any of them in their entirety.
We seem to be doing a good work from what I can see, and it's kind of full circle that the Renaissance builders are doing the project.
Yeah, no
It's-
kidding.
it's,
God, that's amazing.
Yeah.
But they do excellent work. They're great contractors and good reputation.
Yeah.
Done a lot of building work in town, so I'm glad to see we've got a relatively local contractor with that kind of connection too. Is
Yeah.
interesting. Good. Okay.
Okay, so next item, wanted to
We did
offer,
vote on that, right? Did-
yes, well,
I'll just
it
to
again.
double check, I'll just ask for reaffirmation, the vote to authorize the change order number 1 for the Collie Opera building.
Mr. Chair, I'll make that motion.
And I'll second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay.
okay, the next item, I just wanted everyone to know that sort of the big moment of truth for the DPW bidding is this Thursday, the 20th. That is when the general contractor bids come in. Just so people understand the process, we received and opened the sub-trades bids, of which there were several sub-trades. And those generally came in the aggregate, under budget. Not dramatically under budget, but it shows that we had good cost estimation, generally speaking. There's a couple areas that came in a little over, a couple areas that came in a little under, but we took it as a positive indication relative to being able to get the project done on budget. All of those sub-bidders have been reviewed to make certain that, you know, they have appropriate DCAM certifications, et cetera, and that their bid responses were full and complete. Any one significant deviation from that disqualifies them, which is always a bummer for those who put work into it. The general contractors have the opportunity to assemble the team of sub-bidders along with their own team that they choose and make that part of their bid package. They have an incentive to keep the price low so that they win the overall, but this is also a bit of a protection against perhaps a sub-bid that is maybe dangerously low if one is offered, or if there's a negative reputation or just a difficulty in working together that is established. So we will have information to share at next Monday's Select Board meeting. It'll be preliminary because we probably won't have had the opportunity to fully go through all of those applications and get certification that they are fully meet spec. But we'll certainly have a good indication at our next meeting of what the cost will be. And I anticipate that we'll have a meeting of our DPW Building Committee next week on the 25th, I believe that is. We'll review them all together, and we'll come to the Select Board with recommendations for an award of contract to a general contractor at our July 1st meeting.
That's 3 meetings in a row.
So much for the summer schedule, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Well, after that, we'll probably drop it every other week, I think. Okay,
Yes.
that's good news, and let's hope we get some good and qualified bids.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, the bidding was good. We had a great competition at the sub-bid level.
oh, good.
Okay, the next thing, we had a brief conversation about the possibility of having audio-video display options for this conference room. The idea being that, as we saw today, oftentimes it can be difficult for everyone in the room to see presentations if they're simply on easels, or if we have the big wavy projector screen there, and there are other options. And so we tasked our IT consultant, who worked in cooperation with MCTV and with town staff, to look at some different options for displays. And so the presumed cost of this project would be in the vicinity of $5,000. It could be funded through a mix of IT discretionary money with possible contributions from MCTV and perhaps the Conservation Commission as well, that has some money that could be devoted to this. And what I'm looking for from you is an indication as to whether you like the following plan. It would have a 65-inch smart screen LED TV immediately behind you. Okay. It would have another that would be positioned on that wall near where that picture is presently, as one of our big open spaces. And these would be permanently mounted on the walls. We could, for a similar amount of money, add a free-floating cart TV, okay, that might be brought out, say, to here. And all of these could be hooked up through an HDMI connection, so they could broadcast simultaneously through Bluetooth or through a hardwire connection, so that various people who are in the room and want to see something could see them. If it's on a computer screen, that would give someone the ability to blow that image up with, HD resolution. This is why it would be particularly valuable to the Conservation Commission as they're looking at parcels and properties, etc. One of the major costs is assumed to be electrician's time for cabling. We want to make sure that this same feed can be picked up by MCTV, so that the public can get the best possible image when things are being displayed in the room. And so I guess I'm interested first and foremost in your feedback on the location of the 2 static screens, because obviously they're not immediately in front of you. They would require you to do some pivoting and et cetera to see, and whether you would want us to
Do a third.
I think
I like the idea. It's a fair amount, but it would last us a long time. So, the interconnection between their signal to MCCI or to Dean in the back of the room, or whoever's Desiree Rose back there, that's included in this proposal, or is that something?
Yes, there's a wireless HDMI transmitter that is included. And there is the 75 feet of Cat 6 cable that's accounted for, and electrician's time for cabling to make sure that that can be set up, so.
So once this is done, the presenter theoretically could, from their laptop or computer, broadcast. There would be no stringing of wires. It would all be like wireless Bluetooth or whatever
Yeah,
technology to get the signals of the different displays.
yeah.
And Red Sox games on Friday afternoons, or I guess Thursday afternoons. I'm just kidding. Playoff time.
I won't allow that, but if the chair forces me to allow them to watch it here, I don't know what I can do to stop it.
I think if we have, I think we should continue to look at it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we should wait till Michael gets back anyway.
Well, so is there,
I don't see a problem with it really. I mean, I
Okay.
think that, you know, unless you want to wait another week, but I think we all agreed that the way we do it now is pretty
Basic.
pretty difficult for people to really see. And even tonight, it would have been great if the presenters could have presented that on a larger format. It would have been easier for people in the audience to turn and look at it. We could certainly swing around, and I would say we could always add a third portable unit if we needed to, depending upon where we're at with budget or how it works with the first two screens. To me, I think, you know.
Should we ask an opinion from?
Can you hear us back there, Dean?
Yeah.
Are you aware of this? Do you have any concerns, questions, thoughts?
No, it's all good.
Seems
pretty solid.
And so if they could get a feed, you could just directly put that, would be better probably for,
Yeah, so it'll be a direct input.
So that would be-
HDMI input on my end, instead
Perfect.
of using a camera to.
so instead of trying to take a camera image of a TV screen, you could, so that would give better image to the viewers at home too?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
you know, we'll, it sounds like you're at least moderately interested in having the freestanding one that can be moved as well. I think the interesting opportunity there would be that there's another conference room downstairs, and it could potentially, that one could potentially just be brought downstairs and used as a, like if that room is being used for training
Okay.
or presentations, et cetera. It would be a very flexible thing. We can price it a la carte and
Okay.
present it to you.
Yeah, I think, you know, besides our presentations, like you mentioned, conservation and planning would seem to me too that are intensively looking at maps and site plans, and that might be a
In zoning.
zoning.
Yeah.
So it starts to really cross over many different departments, so there may be some opportunity to, you know, like I said, we use it all the time at work.
Right.
It's like, today I was in, we have again the wireless thing, I think similar to this, that we can just connect to an address on our computer and it broadcasts what you're looking at on your screen right to the TV.
Mm-hmm.
And it works out great. And then if people want to show something on, you know, on the internet, or you know, or a video that accompanies something that they're showing to a group, it's really easy. It's quite easy to get that tied in. So I think that's a good plan. So I'd endorse going forward and getting Horace to put a solid plan together. If there's funding in the budget, I'm okay with moving forward. I think
I'll go along with that.
yeah. Okay, let's just go for it.
Okay.
And maybe just give Michael a heads up when you talk to him, if you see him between now and next week, or
Certainly.
run into him.
Certainly.
Okay. All right, anything else for topics not anticipated?
No, sir.
Okay, so, we're doing good, a few minutes ahead of schedule. And our next regularly scheduled meeting is next Monday, the 24th of June, Montague Town Hall, and that meeting time will be 7 PM. I haven't heard anything earlier, right?
No, 7.
7 PM next Monday, June 24th. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
And I'll second it. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Meeting is adjourned at 8:13. Thank you.